Much of the advice coming from the mental health field in America is pretty dismal. Between daily doses of psychoactive medication and a weekly regimen of talk therapy, wellness starts to take on the tone of a part-time job, and not a great one at that. See, any counselor or client will tell you, therapy is work. You have to put in the effort, struggle through the dark times, and work to develop skills and habits that will help you to cope and grow. See, therapy seems very weighty, sometimes arduous work, but this work is the adult thing to do. We have to do the heavy lifting and put in the effort to see results. No pain, no gain, right? Look, let's face it, shock therapy is an evidence-based practice that's proven to work in certain circumstances, but it is the exact opposite of motivating. Yet, with the current boom in evidence-based practice, counseling has become, for lack of a better word, clinical. It's often about pulling down the cognitive behavioral playbook and running treatment by the numbers, scheduling treatment goals, measuring progress, and assigning homework. But where's the motivation in that? If wellness is supposed to be about more than not being ill, there should be some life to it. People don't come to counseling because it's fun, or want to go because it's so enjoyable. Just like exercise, many of us don't do it because we find it pleasurable or entertaining, but to stop feeling bad. For clients, the barriers to entry are already far too high. Though the stigma of therapy is slowly falling away, issues of cost and coverage still keep many at bay. Already, too few have the courage to seek the help they need. Of those who do make it through the gates, a staggering percentage drop out before they get what they came for. Even the most painful issues of trauma and loss, as well as more common complaints, could sorely use a more playful approach. Anxiety, depression, and behavior modification especially could surely use a more encouraging, even enjoyable style of practice. Much of psychology and counseling is a matter of perspective, yet as a product that promises health and happiness, both the expectations and the experience could desperately use a makeover. Research indicates that physical activity and spending time in nature both contribute to a sense of well-being. What the science often overlooks is the how. If you don't like doing something, you're not going to see any benefits. For example, I hate running, and I always have, even as a kid. Running is never going to make me feel better. I do, however, love to hike. Where you can't get me to run even a mile, you can get me to hike for hours. It's about finding what works for you and avoiding what is work to you. Now, while I have no problem committing to an hour walk with my coffee every morning, it would take a lot longer for me to gear up for a run than I would ever actually spend running. The reason is simple. One is fun, one is not. When we're young, we learn and grow through play. Play is both imaginative and experimental. It is how we first try on adult roles and expand our experience beyond ourselves. It is an experimental space in which we are free to create and be spontaneous, to engage in fantasy within the theater of the mind. Imaginative play is where we first learn about our social world and field test initial models of future selves. Through play, we learn important skills like perspective taking that allows us to develop empathy, and the social graces that develop our ability to be effective team members. Through play, we learn to harness the synergy of being creative with others. When we are young, we seem to have a direct line to this creative, unconscious space, the part of our mind that is symbolic and expresses itself in metaphor and imagery. This creative side is often left behind as we move into the adult world, but it serves as a wellspring of information and intuition for adults who can stay connected to it. As adults, we generally put aside that playful nature to be taken more seriously in the world. This is a developmental tragedy. It walls us off from our creativity and adaptability, impacting the imagination and capacity to experiment with ideas. Imposter syndrome and fake it till you make it advice both orbit this ability to suspend disbelief and pretend. Jung considered fantasy to be critical to creativity, naming the dynamic principle of fantasy to be play. Play is critical to the development of self-regulation skills, and both research and theory seem to indicate that play has the powerful capacity of being restorative and therapeutic. Einstein even acknowledged the creative growth potential of imaginative play by saying, "Imagination is everything. It is the preview of life's coming attractions." Harnessing the power of play seems primarily a matter of approach. Winnicott believed psychotherapy has to do with two people playing together in an attempt to establish what he called an imaginal play space. Jung described his analytical method of psychotherapy as equivalent to a process of active imagination. Bachelard noted there is a great value in imagination and called for having it restored to its proper, all-important place as a principle of direct stimulation of psychic becoming. I'm not even entirely sure what that means, but it sounds super cool. These statements seem to point towards therapy as a supportive experimental space, somewhere to try things out if we can only learn to let it be playful. Perhaps what Jung meant by his analytical method was for both client and counselor to have this playful attitude, to be willingly experimental, and to permit fantasy by allowing an imaginal space to be created between them. Therapy can be more than just talking through issues, distilling feelings into language. It can be a way of using creative practices to explore those feelings without words, a way to learn skills and change habits through gamification, even a way to role-play a future you, or test out changes in a past you wish you could change. Play is like riding a bike, or riding a bike is play, depending on how you look at it. All we have to do is get it rolling, and it will come back to us. If we can learn to suspend our sense of self-importance by setting aside expectations of consequence, criticism, and judgment, we can begin to allow space to pretend and fantasize, to experiment with ideas and alternatives. This playing with ideas is simply a skill we left behind in our childhood, and it can be relearned and developed. Imagination can be cultivated through use. As either counselor or client, we can choose to approach the work as a chance for playful practice, an opportunity to dress up in a new approach or role and see what we can learn. Sessions can be fun if both sides bring a creative energy and a willingness to experiment with what if. There is always a time and place for adult seriousness and concerns of work and effort in therapy, but the exclusion of learning and motivation that can be accessed through play can make change harder than it needs to be. We don't have to sacrifice progress for professionalism or enthusiastic energy for expectations of what should be. When it comes to personal change, learning to take action and trust is hard enough without wringing the joy out of a natural process of learning and growth that once came so effortlessly through play. Thanks for watching.